Welcome, everybody. My name is Daniel Pearson. I'm the Executive Director for Educators for Excellence, our Connecticut chapter, and I have the distinct pleasure of helping facilitate this webinar with some incredible folks. On the E4E team behind the scenes, we have Jordan, Ernest, and Shane. And then on screen, who's going to help facilitate, we have Sarah Kovac, who is our wonderful senior organizer in Hartford. And we have Kiara, who is our national growth officer, who has a ton of experience. And then we have two of our 8 wonderful teacher leaders who are going to speak to their experiences and speak to the data from the surveys that we've had thus far. We have Richard DeMay and we have Caroline, who are going to present some data later on. But first, let's get started with who we are. So Ernest, you want to share your screen? All right. All right, perfect. So for those who are might not be aware, Educators for Excellence was founded by teachers, for teachers, and for students. You can read our mission and vision statement there. We were founded in 2010 and have grown out of New York City, have grown to 6 sites and have a national arm. We'll go to the next slide. So at Educators for Excellence, you can see the breadth that we have. So we organize teachers to make sure that they are at the forefront of education policy decisions, both how they are written and how they are enacted. And we want to make sure that we're elevating the teacher profession and putting students at the center of our education system. You can see how many members we have, nearly 37,000 nationwide. We have almost 1,200 here in Connecticut, with about 27% of the Hartford public school system educators are members. So we have quite a number of members who are your colleagues who have helped facilitate this process and the data that we're about to see. So in the next slide, you'll see some of the highlights that we've had. So how we operate is we organize public school teachers to take action on campaigns that help their profession and help the environment in which what's going on in your school building. So in school funding, we've been able to add over $300 million to K-12 education in its entirety in Connecticut. Specifically in Hartford, added nearly $25 million more dollars over the last 2 years. Around teacher diversity, we've helped in coalition drive the teacher diversity to exceed our 10% statewide, which we've hit. We have a lot more work to do, but proud of the work that we've done to help build our Grow Your Own programs, create scholarship funds for students of color who want to become teachers, and also modernize the teacher certification process. And then, of course, we know that when we're teaching students, we teach the whole student. And so social emotional learning is a big part of what we do as well. And so we've helped pass significant bills to add resources to the SEL supports in schools, primarily during COVID, but we know that those problems exist before COVID, after COVID. So we want to make sure that those resources are in the buildings long term. So as part of our efforts, we wanted to make sure teachers are are at the forefront of policy decisions that are being made. And currently, the Hartford Public School District is undergoing a strategic planning process, and they're going to come out with their new strategic plan in February. And we wanted to make sure that teachers' voices are being heard throughout that. So on the next slide, we're going to talk about how we got to where we are now. So at the end of last year, we had one-on-one conversations with hundreds of teachers, including HFT leadership, to see what are some of the top issues that our teachers are wanting the district to focus on. We conducted focus groups in the spring with 124 teachers across 6 schools. Many of you were a part of those conversations, and honed in on what areas teachers wanted to focus on in the upcoming year. And then what we did is we looked at that data, and a group of 8 teacher leaders, we've come up with a survey that we've put out in the field. And now we've had almost 300 teachers from 22 different schools in Hartford complete those surveys. And we are, sorry, my computer froze on my end. Sorry. And so now we have nearly 300 teachers, and we are going to keep these in the field for another month. So if you haven't taken a survey already, please reach out to one of us afterwards and we can make sure that you get the survey. But we wanted to make sure that we're sharing those interim results now. So now I want to throw it over to Richard, who's going to talk a little bit more about some of the questions and some of the results based on the strategic planning process and the priorities that we want to see put forth. Richard. Oh, you're muted.
Yes. Hi. Again, my name is Richard DeMay, and I'm a teacher at the Hartford Public Schools, and I'm in my 18th year in the district. However, in my 34th year as an educator. During our focus groups in the district, there is one quote from a colleague that actually stood out to me and to many others. And the quote states, "I'm glad teachers are being included in this strategic planning process because it is important that we are heard. But more important than being heard is that real action is taken to address our needs. If that isn't done, then the district will continue to struggle with retention." And that was a statement by my dear colleague, Sue Rubb. Teachers are the frontline workers in education and are closest to the challenges facing our students. We must be included in the decision-making process to ensure the policies set forth are ones that actually solve the issues we face in the classroom. Now, here are some of the key contexts we considered about Hartford Public Schools as we designed and conducted our survey and drafted recommendations for policy shifts. First, let's talk about students. As is true in districts nationwide, students' enrollment in the district is declining. Large numbers of students are chronically absent, and student achievement has decreased. Unfortunately, outcomes are worse in the district than they are statewide. And they are particularly bad for students with disabilities who lag behind their peers in all outcomes, including attendance, achievement, and graduation rates. Now, let's consider teachers at the Hartford Public Schools. Hartford Public Schools has 173 teaching vacancies, of which 54 are special education vacancies. That's more than a quarter of the budgeted special education positions. Only 23% of district teachers identify as people of color, despite serving a student population made up of 93% teachers of color. The positive impact teachers of color, like myself, have on all students, but particularly students of color, is well documented in the research. However, unfortunately, our students don't get to see enough teachers of color and fail to benefit from this. And the teachers who are recruited are often not retained. 20% of teachers leave annually, including a third of all new teachers. Hartford is a district in crisis, and entrenched inequities persist across the district, with higher student needs concentrated in neighborhood schools. We hope the recommendations that we share today will inspire a small step towards addressing this. Before we dive into our recommendations for the coming strategic plan, let's take a moment to revisit the prior one. The good news is that, as you can see in the graph on the left, 70% of teachers reported being familiar with the last strategic plan, though most of those teachers fell into the somewhat familiar category. And despite this high percentage, attrition in the district, of course, hinders teacher knowledge of the plan and, as a result, implementation. You can see in the graph on the left that around a third of teachers reported believing that each of the 4 focus areas of the strategic plan were implemented well or very well. We believe providing this information to teachers during the onboarding process could help both with familiarity and implementation. Now, Caroline has an experience she would like to share with us.
Yeah, hi. So I can introduce myself really quickly. My name is Caroline Dowd. I'm a preschool teacher at Environmental Sciences Magnet School here in Hartford. And this is my 12th, I'm going into my 12th year as a, or no, sorry, 13th year as a preschool teacher, and my 3rd here in the district. So I came into environmental sciences in the middle of October of 2 years ago. And because of that, I missed a lot of the initial process and a lot of the initial information that was given to new teachers starting the school year. And I believe my understanding is that this was one of those things. So really, it wasn't until I started working with Educators for Excellence that I was even familiar with the idea that there was a strategic plan. It was not something that I was ever really made aware of. And as somebody who is actively involved and really engaged in the day-to-day and in the more behind the scenes political and policy related issues going on in the district, it was kind of stunning to me to find out that this was something that existed that I was unfamiliar with. So I think I am a good representation in that respect of especially newer teachers to the district who may miss out on this kind of really impactful and important information that is available, but not necessarily easy to find or made accessible in a way that I feel like would be helpful. So we can go up to the next slide. And let's start talking about the teacher. Let's see, hang on.
We have
Oh,
one.
sorry, it's Richard first. I'm sorry, and then me. Go ahead, Richard.
Sure,
I'm
sure,
jumping
sure.
ahead.
Now, this graph shows how teachers hope to be engaged in this year's strategic plan process. It's clear that meeting teachers where they are is most important, as the top choice was forums at teachers' schools. Just about half of the teachers indicated that town halls are also an important mechanism, and we believe it is highly important that the superintendent appear at those, as well as to hear directly from teachers. Email updates were ranked 3 of 4, receiving too many at times can make that method of communication feel overwhelming. So the district should make sure the communication is concise and highlights what is most important. Now, Caroline.
All right, thank you. So let's go ahead and start talking about the results that we saw. So this slide shows what teachers believe should be the top priorities in the next strategic plan, including teacher recruitment and retention, high quality teaching and learning, and student social emotional well-being. The first 2 got far more votes than the third, with nearly 3/4 of teachers identifying them as among their top 3 priorities. And this data does not surprise us. Turnover rates have been extremely high every year. And we have to reteach the culture and logistics of the school, which has a negative impact on the school environment. Issues within the school go unnoticed due to lack of consistency of personnel in the building. And it's tough to recruit teachers to a school with high turnover, which creates a negative feedback loop in which it's even harder to recruit. I was, for example, promoted to team leader during my second year, so last year, because the other two teachers who are more senior either left the district or moved to a different position. And that put a lot of pressure on me and the new team as we were all practically learning about the school together. I just happened to have 1 year on my new colleagues. Um, Richard, and I know you had some thoughts on this as well regarding the Jazz Festival in Hartford.
Yes, that's correct. In Hartford, we every summer have the Jazz Festival, and it's one of those festivals that draws people from all across New England and perhaps even further who come to Hartford. Now, this would be a golden opportunity for our district to be present with a tent, a setup there to recruit, potentially recruit teachers that are coming into the state for the Jazz Festival. Unfortunately, over the years, we have not seen our um, district present at the Jazz Festival and losing or missing that opportunity to recruit teachers. That is critical. That's important, and we ought to consider doing that. Moving forward, having a presence to recruit those who potentially could be the next teachers in our district.
Absolutely, yeah, and people who are relevant, who are in the district as well. It's important to have people who are local. So one of the quotes that we received through this survey that we worked on is from Rachel Taylor, who is a Hartford alumna, a parent leader, and a longtime former teacher. And she said across the district, there are 40 special education teacher spots open. 40. That is hundreds of children with special needs not receiving the education they need, deserve, and are entitled to by law and humanity. That's something I think a lot of teachers here in Hartford are familiar with, unfortunately. And, let's see. Oops, sorry. And then this slide shows the top 3 policy shifts teachers would like to see made in the district, zooming in from high-level priorities to actual policy recommendations. We crafted the responses to the questions well aware of the district's financial challenges and the need to do more with less in this moment. And as a result, you'll see that the policy recommendations teachers chose among were all aligned with the need to be strategic with those district resources. The clear top choice in the survey was providing additional annual pay to teachers in hard to staff schools and subject areas, with nearly 3/4 of teachers placing this in their top 3 choices. This aligns with what we know about shortages in the district, particularly in special education, as evidenced by the last quote as well. And that would channel resources to the areas where we are struggling the most. The second choice was providing additional pay for highly effective teachers. Again, this would channel resources strategically by working to improve the retention of our most effective teachers. And finally, the third choice was better aligning PL or professional learning to curriculum, which is particularly relevant right now given the district's new curriculum adoption. This data delivers a clear message. Filling vacancies and retaining effective teachers is the most critical thing the district must do. Again, we recognize we are in a time of fiscal distress, and so any of these recommendations could be narrowed further to the most critical areas. For example, additional pay could be given to special education teachers or highly effective teachers, specifically in the schools with the lowest staff retention or academic achievement, or extended PLC time could be carved out only in those schools. Um, and now I'm going to throw it over to Daniel to talk a little bit more about the details of this.
Thank you, Caroline. So over the next several slides, we're going to dive a little deeper into each one of these desired policy shifts. So let's start with the top desired policy shift, higher pay for hardest staff areas. Why is this so critical to Hartford Public Schools specifically? 20% of the district's teachers, including a third of new teachers, leave the district each year. In a recent survey conducted by the district, teachers considering leaving indicated that the most significant reason for doing so was dissatisfaction with their compensation and benefits. But like many districts nationwide, Hartford is in the midst of severe financial challenges. Across the board raises for all teachers is not a possibility. So increasing compensation strategically to channel it towards the areas where we need it most is critical. We know from data that where we need it the most is in special education. The district currently has 173 teacher vacancies. A third of those are among special education teachers, leaving 26% of all special education positions vacant. And we know from teachers' lived experiences that those shortages in special education are putting significant strain on schools throughout the school building. Not just the special education teachers who are in the building, but all of the teachers who work alongside them. Next slide, we're going to dive a little deeper into what the research says. So what does the evidence say about how we can fix this problem? Research shows that higher pay for effective teachers in hard to staff areas lead to higher teacher retention and student achievement. That pay, however, must be at least $5,000 annually in order to effectively impact outcomes. And teachers nationwide approve of this strategy. 87% of teachers favor financial incentives for teachers working in hard to staff subject areas, and 93% favor them for teachers in hard to staff schools. In fact, teachers of color report that these kind of incentives are the best way to recruit a high quality, diverse workforce, indicating that this shift could not only improve recruitment and retention, but teacher diversity in the district as well. Districts across the country have implemented this strategy, and Hartford can look to them and replicate what's working. Hawaii and Douglas County in Colorado offer $10,000 annual bonuses for special education teachers. In Hawaii, this led to a 32% decrease in special education vacancies. In Ravenswood, special education teachers receive a $5,000 annual bonus. The district started this school year with 0 vacancies. So what can we do in Hartford? The next slide. Teachers want this strategy implemented, and the evidence tells us it could effectively address Hartford's specific challenges. How do we implement it? Currently, the Hartford board is permitted to offer one-time signing bonuses up to $5,000 to attract teachers to shortage areas and up to 20% of a salary to work in a school deemed in need. While this existing policy works towards eliminating the challenges I just spoke of, it's not enough. We know from the research that bonuses must be $5,000 minimal and be annual to be effective. With this in mind, the district should consider modifying these bonuses to be annual increases specifically for special education teachers, given the severe shortages and resulting challenges in that subject area. So I'm going to throw it over to my colleague, Sarah, to dive into the second priority.
All right, so let's dig into the second most highly rated policy shift, and that is higher pay for highly effective teachers. A lot of what Daniel just spoke of, the challenges that he just referred to that we are facing in HPS are going to be relevant to here as well. The district is experiencing severe shortages and attrition. For example, vacancies have gone from 122 to 173 in the past year alone, not to mention the 20% attrition Hartford faces annually, which includes 33% of our new teachers. But the fiscal strain Hartford also faces makes across the board raises financially impossible, which means strategic compensation is necessary. If we go to the next slide, we can look at some of the research and examples of what's worked and what we see across the board. So with just like with higher to pay for staff areas, the research shows that higher pay for effective teachers leads to improved retention and student achievement. However, we know from this research that in order for that to be effective, rigorous evaluation systems that leverage multiple measures are absolutely necessary. And additionally, teachers must receive large individual bonuses of at least $5,000 or more, rather than group bonuses where an entire school staff receives a bonus for student growth. This is what we've seen as in terms of research-based, what is actually effective. 3/4 of teachers nationally favor financial incentives like this for highly effective teachers. And we can see some examples across this as well. Districts across the country have implemented such approaches and have seen outcomes improve. In Tennessee, annual bonuses for highly effective teachers in high poverty schools increased both teacher retention and reading scores. In DC, the most effective teachers receive bonuses of up to $25,000 annually. And in Baltimore, highly effective teachers advance on the district's salary schedule more quickly, which we've heard overwhelmingly from teachers in Hartford has been an issue as well. Currently, HPS provides $2,500 bonuses to teachers at schools that show significant improvement. However, to align with the research that we've seen on what works and what teachers are calling for in our survey, they could consider increasing the size of the bonus and allowing teachers to individually qualify for it. We would not, however, recommend implementing this unless the district first thoroughly assessed its teacher evaluation system to ensure that it's accurately identifying highly effective teachers. And just to close out this focus on this last policy shift, we have a quote as well from one of our teachers. And it says, "Finding ways to increase pay is the key to retaining experienced teachers." And we've heard from teachers across the board that we need teachers with all kinds of levels of experience. New teachers are valuable. Teachers that have been in the district also hold a lot of historical knowledge. And so finding ways to increase the pay is the key to retaining the teachers that we need. This is what the data shows us. I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Kiara now to talk about our third policy shift.
Thanks, Sarah. And just to echo that, a couple of things. First of all, in the data from teachers who are leaving, they're also sharing that's the number one reason they're leaving. And I think also the reason why the first two policy recommendations are focused on the incentives to get teachers to come and stay in teaching in Hartford is because it's about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to get top quality teachers into the classroom and staying before we're able to develop them even further. And so this is one of the conditions that we know will help teachers want to stay, which is alignment between curriculum and professional learning. And that's the third recommendation. Why this matters in Hartford? Well, there's a big shift going on that we're excited about with a high quality curriculum implementation. But this adoption of wit and wisdom across K-5 classrooms requires a lot of sustained support for teachers. And this comes at a time when 88% of the instructional coaches were laid off at the district as a result of the ESSER fund expiration. So because of this, we need to do something different, and our teachers are asking for this. On the next slide, you can see some of the research base here. So teachers of color have shared that better professional learning and leadership opportunities in doing that is one of the best ways to retain teachers of color. We also know that effective professional learning is not a one and done couple workshops at the beginning of the year to learn a new curriculum. It is sustained, it is job embedded, it is built into collaboration time, and it allows teachers to collaborate with one another. And not to mention, in order for this collaboration time to be really meaningful, teachers need at least 90 minutes on every week to collaborate if it's going to result in increased teacher retention and student achievement. And with this backdrop, teachers are reporting that PLCs in operation in some schools are not always effective, and they need to be better aligned to the curriculum that teachers are being asked to teach. Some of these PLC leaders are in roles, but they're not being paid enough, and they're not supported in training for the roles that they are occupying. And not to mention, teachers only have 45 minutes a week that they're not spending with students. That's not nearly enough to both prepare and to collaborate with their colleagues. So some of the shifts that we're recommending are to, one, continue to pursue compensating PLC roles. These leadership positions are critical, and getting top-notch teachers in these positions and rewarding them for that training and support that they are giving is really, really important. It's also a huge way to retain highly effective and diverse teachers. Secondly, we ask you to consider increasing contractually guaranteed preparation time to allow that time that's aligned with the research so that the time spent here is actually effective. Potentially specifically targeting the highest priority schools if it can't be done across the board. We recognize that these kinds of shifts have financial implications. And so if there needs to be a pilot or a phase in, can we target that at our schools that have the most needs so we can be serving our kids who need it the most? And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Daniel.
Great. Thank you, Kiara. So, a lot of great knowledge, a lot of great data coming out of these surveys from our highly incredible teachers throughout the district, all in service of our kids. So what we're doing next, we're going to continue conducting the survey until November 22nd. So if you haven't completed the survey yet and are an educator in Hartford, please reach out to one of us. We're going to follow up with all the attendees and send this recording out to everyone in the district. We want to make sure that your voices are part of this process. We're also going to be scheduling one-on-one briefings with key stakeholders, with the district, with the State Department, with HFT leadership, with the Blue Ribbon Commission, and most of all with you all, with all the teachers. Given the survey trends and the persistent special education shortages, we're going to try to conduct a focus group in the next couple of weeks, specifically for special education teachers, to draft some of the recommendations there. And by December, we're going to come out with a report with all of our survey findings and all of our teacher crafted recommendations for the district to incorporate into their strategic plan, and most importantly, to start implementing some of those policies and practices. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to any one of us. We can go ahead and stop screen share so we can see all of our panelists, and we can remove the spotlight. And I just want to say thank you to Richard and Caroline for not only being wonderful teachers within the district, but also going above and beyond to participate in these extracurriculars and really advocating on their free time to make sure that their school buildings, their classrooms, and their students are getting what they deserve, and making Hartford the go-to district for all prospective teachers. And so a big round of applause to all of the panelists, for all of the E4E staff, but most importantly for Richard and Caroline, who are doing this work. I believe we don't have any questions in the chat, but we will be following up with all of you who are in attendance, and we're also going to be sending out this webinar recording to all of the teachers that have completed surveys thus far, and the school leaders across the district, to disseminate amongst their teachers so we can get this information in as many people's hands as possible. So with that, any closing statements from the panelists before we say goodnight? All right. Thank you all so much, and be on the lookout for the recording of this webinar.